Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we get started, real quick, I made kind of a mistake here when I was doing this episode, and for some reason, and I think you'll probably tell by the topic of the episode, the video part of this recorded in a slow-mo kind of time-lapse version, which obviously doesn't suit very well with the podcast. So there's going to be no video for this episode, but I think you'll understand why as you listen more to it. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unfounded Podcast. Thank you for joining me here again after a very long hiatus. I've been working on some projects for specifically music for quite a while now. I've been really focusing on it, and just recently got my first single, Gaslight Baby, released. So I'm really excited to show that to everybody. I'm not going to show it here on the podcast, but I will guide you to where you can listen to it. It's out on all the major platforms, so we'll get into that here a little bit later in the episodes towards the end. But I wanted to get back on and kind of get another episode out because it has been quite a while. I think it's been 8 or 9 months since the last episode that we've recorded, and I feel like the world has changed quite a bit in that time. I definitely need some time to reflect on that, and I think that there's no better place than the podcast, as this started as a journal of sorts, a way for me to get out ideas that I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to about. And I hope that over the years, if you've been a listener for quite a while, if you've followed the podcast for quite a while, that you've used this as that sort of tool as well, because that's really what it's meant to do, is give you a kind of a forum to engage with ideas and to think about things that you don't feel comfortable thinking about in the world. I don't even know where to start, to be quite honest, because to put it plainly, the world has been brutal. I've said in the podcast before that, we need to buckle up, hold on tight, because the world's going to get crazy. And I didn't know just how accurate that was going to be when I said that at the time. But I think the last episodes that we did that were unfounded and the Unfounded Podcast related, where I wasn't doing Take Me to Church, was right around when the election happened, right after the election. And there was a lot of speculation about how the new administration would develop, what direction politics would take in the aftermath of the election. And I don't know if anybody could really predict the huge turns that everything has taken over the last 9 months or so. Specifically, the heaviest thing that we're dealing with right now is the untimely death and assassination of Charlie Kirk. Something that's hit me really personally, deeply, because he was a figure that I followed quite closely. And somebody that I at times had disagreements with, but somebody that I deeply respected. And so losing a figure like that has been rough, as I'm sure it's been for many of the listeners around the world that tune in. But there is something that's kind of becoming apparent, at least in the West here in the United States, and that is that our society is deeply, deeply, deeply sick. That politics itself has created a certain type of rot inside of the individual that nobody really knows how to solve at this point. It's not just politics, but all of the extensions of the modern world, social media specifically, the new developments in AI and the way that that's changing the way people interact with each other, everything that happened with COVID and the lockdowns, political violence itself, radicalization of our youth, kind of the attack on traditional values, sexuality, belief, faith itself. All of the movies that are now seemingly openly demonic, not even trying to hide anymore. I don't even know where to start. there's a somberness that I have, not just for Charlie Kirk and for the other people suffering in the world through all of this, but also for kind of the direction it seems we're heading. One thing that I wanted to address very kind of specifically at the beginning of this podcast, and I've been contemplating for quite a while, is what this show has been for me and for you. I titled it The Unfounded Podcast because I wanted to challenge founded ideas. I wanted to have unfounded conversations. I wanted to allow myself to think outside of the box so that I would take the restrictions that even, the traditions of faith would put on you, so that you could ask the questions and say the things that you normally would keep yourself from saying, so that we can really analyze what we believe deeply, not through kind of the lens of what we think people should see us believing, for lack of a better way of putting it. And while I still like that idea, I love that that's the direction I've taken the podcast. It's helped me tremendously, as I hope it's helped you to engage with ideas at that level. I've also come to a realization over the last year or so, as I've kind of come to the end, or at least a real understanding in my own spirituality and faith that I've been searching for on this podcast, that many of the things that I've said in the past, in past episodes, many of the ideas I've played with, I now have a certain amount of shame about, oddly enough. And for those of you who have been listening for a long time and have heard me talk about very controversial subjects, especially in the context of religion, faith, I want you to know that my intent was never to actually offend or to insult anything divine by doing that, but it was actually to understand deeply what I believe. And I wanted to take you along on that journey, but I want to address a couple of the things that I've said in the past that I now wholeheartedly disagree with, and that I believe were certain influences, or we're being influenced by certain entities, certain things in this world, fallen things in this world that deceive. And the main one that keeps hitting my head is, I have done episodes, I believe the first one was titled The Christmas Star, and I'm trying to remember the last one. I think it's called The Morning Star. But in these episodes, I talked about and looked into this comparison between what the figure of Jesus is referred to as many times and what the figure of Lucifer has been referred to as before, that being the name the Morning Star. And that in those episodes specifically, I dove into comparing the two figures, and if I remember correctly, came to the conclusion that it's hard for me to even say out loud now, that the figure of Jesus and the figure of Lucifer are two sides of the same coin, I believe is how I put it. And I want to wholeheartedly say right now that I condemn that idea, and that I think that is a bold-faced lie. Not that I was lying in the moment, but that something was deceiving me to say that as if it was the truth. And that nothing could be further from the truth from where I sit right now and my faith that I have gained over the last handful of years. That I believe the reason that happened and the reason I came to that conclusion is I was deceived. That I have been possessed, literally, at times on this podcast by not just one but many different entities that you would refer to as demons in the Christian tradition. And that it is my job now to identify that that has happened in the past. As many of the episodes that you've heard on this were me speaking for something else that I did not know I was carrying. And I believe this happens for many people around the world, that this is actually much more common than we understand. That as you get more into spirituality and you understand the reality of the spiritual world, you'll start to realize that what we refer to as possession in the Catholic tradition is much more common than people like to realize. That what you see in movies like The Exorcist is not the only way that presents itself. As a matter of fact, many people who are possessed, the things that are hiding within them are doing exactly that. They are hiding. They are attempting to deceive not only the person, but the people around them so that they can influence them, change their minds, and slowly open the doorway so that that person who is listening, so that infection can spread. And that I believe that some of the episodes I've made, as I've outlined here in this little snippet, did exactly that. And if that is what happened for you in any capacity, if I turned you away from the truth in any capacity in my attempt to find the truth, I want to deeply, deeply apologize. And to clarify what I believe the truth is, what I've found the truth to be. It's not about a belief anymore. I am Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. I was raised Catholic, and I have come back to the Catholic faith. So that, as I said before, many of the ideas that I prodded and played with, many of the ideas about tarot readings, the tarot readings I did on here for many of you, the ideas of predicting things, the ideas of reading people's minds, the ideas of being an intuitive being that can somehow glean insight that other human beings can't glean, was all misguided symptoms of the very possession that I am referring to here now. So that if any of you are listening to this and are still in the midst of that same confusion, I want to implore you to go to a church, to talk to a priest, to seek forgiveness, to truly listen for the truth, to understand that we are fallen beings, that we confuse what we want with what we should be doing, with what the Father would want, with what God would want. And that because we have this egotism built into us, that our egos are so outsized in relation to the rest of our being, we tend to project things onto the divine. And that projection is a space in which things that are malformed, that are vicious, that are evil by definition, will take advantage of. That space between what is the truth and what your understanding of the truth is where they sit. I heard it recently put on one of the podcasts or one of the videos I was watching that the devil itself is a deceiver. It's the best liar that's ever existed. It's where lies come from, as a matter of fact. And that the devil is so good at the lying that it does that 99.9% of what it says is true. That the gap is that 0.1%. It's this hidden aspect. It's this distinction that you may overlook. And it relies on you and your ego and these other deceptions that are inbuilt in the fallen nature of us as human beings to miss that 0.1%. So that you will advocate for something that you believe is true, but is in no way the truth, not in totality. So that I hope I've done a good job at the beginning of this podcast describing what I believe I've done many times in this podcast, and that I've been in deep contemplation over the last few weeks, at the very least, over whether I should keep those episodes up, and that I'm still actually thinking about what I should do specifically with the ones I outlined, the Morning Star, because I believe it is such a deep deception and such a bold-faced lie that it insults the divine. But that I'm also torn, because as I've prayed about this, as I've asked the Father what I should do, I have gotten the message, the reassurance over and over again that there's a purpose to the deception, to the documentation of it, so that, like I'm doing right now, the people who are listening can see, get emotional, thinking about it, how wrong I've been, to not run from it, to know and recognize fully that I am a flawed thing, just like you are, and that we shouldn't be ashamed of the ways we are flawed. That, as a matter of fact, the truth, and the way I'm trying to outline right now, can only be seen if people have the courage to show when they are wrong. So that, as I said, I contemplate deeply what I should do about some of the episodes that I've created here. More specifically, to talk about tarot. I believe that this is also another deception. That the problem with tarot is you don't know what you're talking to. These things deceive you, they trick you, they pretend very specifically to be God or gods themselves. This is all inbuilt in the story of the Bible. It tells you, it warns you what these things want, what demons want, what the devil wants. It tells you in the fall from grace that the devil was cast out specifically because he tried to usurp the place of God, tried to be God, wanted to be God, through an egotism more massive than you could imagine even in yourself. And that the effect that the human being experiences after the fact comes from a deep jealousy of the love the Father has for all of his creation, including you. So that the means through which it tries to corrupt human beings is through a similar type of jealousy, a similar motivation that came from the initial fall, the initial betrayal, that being a desire to be God. So that if you look in the world, which is horrifying at the moment, what you will see is people trying to be their own God, trying to convince you to listen to them, trying to make you think that they're Jesus-like, that they don't have these lower motives, that their morals are perfect, that the reason they say what they say is because they want to say the truth, when in reality what they're motivated by is greed, by a desire to be the truth themselves, by a desire to eliminate God so that the judgment they feel deeply internally based on the things that they are ashamed of no longer has any hold. All rooted from the original deception the devil committed. So that, as I began to say, tarot is another one of these deceptions from what I understand now. And in the same vein, you can go and listen to me on many different episodes. Give you, the listener, who I value very deeply and appreciate very deeply, advice using that medium that was in no way rooted in the place that I said it was. Well, I thought I was giving you the truth. What I was giving you was a deception. I was being a vessel for something that I didn't know I was allowing in. I was talking to things that were liars. So that if I misled you, if I pulled you off of the path of righteousness, of truth, of a relationship with the actual Father, with Jesus, I deeply apologize. I ask forgiveness for, but that I hope that in continuing my original intent with this podcast, I can represent to you the actual truth, that you can hear it in my voice as it shakes. You can see it in my tears. That those things, those tools, as I described them at times, are nothing but deceptions. And that once you come to a true relationship with the Father, with faith, when you actually have faith, when you feel that love, you will know the difference immediately. And I want you to know as a listener that that is out there for you. And that if you want to hear the difference, you still can. Just go back to an early episode. Go listen to where I started. how confused I was, how scared I was, how lost I was, and how lost I've been this entire time, even as I tried to pretend like I knew things. This is what human beings do. This is how they act. They're very good actors. We all are. And if that means I have to use myself as that example to demonstrate that, I will, and I hope that some good comes from that. So that you know it's not just me. Every single person you are watching right now, every single person you are listening to right now is lying to you if they are not speaking the truth of Jesus, the truth of the Father, the truth of the Bible. They are lying to you. They are deceived themselves. And so many of them won't even try to talk to you about faith or religion. They'll just tell you it doesn't exist, period. And my God, are they deceived? Captured at a deeper level by this thing. If you don't believe me from where I sit right now, I understand. I don't mean to insult you. But I ask you, go look in the world. Tell me how you feel. Tell me where you find fulfillment. Tell me where you find peace. Tell me who's telling the truth. Who isn't hiding something. Who doesn't have ulterior motives for what they're doing. Who isn't motivated by money and fame and wealth and sex. From what I see, that's all that motivates people. At the same time, I see nobody saying that. No one. They all pretend to be righteous, to be good people, to be people who are acting sometimes in accordance with the will of God. And I hope you understand now what I mean when I say the original sin the devil committed was trying to imitate God, because that is what that is a symptom of. It's a mini version of it. There's no reverence, there's no humility for a truth that's bigger than you, that's bigger than you can understand, that you couldn't even describe. It's ineffable. And by definition, God is the ineffable. It's too big of a concept even to describe with words, to show with your vision, to hear, to feel even. That the only capacity we have in this fallen world is to capture little snippets of it in our senses. Which is why the story of Jesus is so profound. Because you have God embodied in a human figure, showing the reality of the Father through a form that we can somewhat understand. But even that is too great for us to fully resonate with, because we can't even imagine being so perfect. We take the figure of Jesus and we raise him to an idol of sorts, even in some versions of Christianity. Because we can't contemplate the actual intent the Father had with the human being. That the human being has always been perfect in a certain way, as long as it acts in accordance with the will of the Father, which is what Jesus did. Was the only true human being to ever live. That all of us are not that. That we're a compilation of these other things I described earlier. A perversion of it. That if you want to know what you have the capacity to be, look at the cross. Because I don't believe that the idea of Jesus as God is meant to discourage you from being a human being with the same capacity. That I think the whole reason the Father chose the human being to embody himself in as fully as he could was to demonstrate his original intent with the human being, the capacity of this thing, the beauty of it when it lives in accordance with that. My God, can you imagine love that's so deep that you forgive your own murderers as you're looking at them, as you're suffering? That not only do you forgive, but you ask the angels, you ask the divine to forgive them. Something that I imagine even they are struggling with in that moment, as a father would struggle to forgive his child's murderer, his child's torturer. This brings me to kind of one of the most emotional current events that I've experienced in my lifetime. The assassination of Charlie. There was something divine at work in that man. And the reason I know that is because there's a clarity that happens anytime someone dies. You hear people say that genius is only recognized after the person dies, right? That many of the most brilliant human beings that have ever lived were not recognized while they were here. That they were ignored many times or attacked, belittled. But that when anybody dies, you can experience this in your own life. When you have a family member pass, all of the bickering that you went through, all of the different annoyances you had of that person, all of the ways you pick apart them as a human being, they disappear in that instant, and immediately you see what you loved about them. You see the value, you see the intent that God had, the way that he worked through them. And I have never seen a better demonstration of that than Charlie Kirk. It is one of the most beautiful things to witness so many young people specifically, but people from all ages and all walks of life, turning to the Father, turning to God, turning to the church, finally, and opening that door, if nothing else, even if they're still apprehensive, even if they're still scared, even if they fear judgment that will not come. Because that's all that it takes. That's all that God is asking for. Come back to me. Speak the truth. Have the courage to speak the truth. And that's one thing that I realized Charlie Kirk was doing his entire life, from what I can tell, was speaking the truth. Regardless of the consequences. And there's something divine in that. So that, as I said early on in this episode, I didn't always agree with Charlie. There was things that I myself would debate. There was comments I made even on X, that decrepit platform, that example of all of the nastiness in this world that will corrupt you if you even spend an ounce of time on it. There were comments that I made immediately, that I realized immediately as Charlie was shot and then we found out that he died, that I became deeply ashamed of. That weren't even really that bad. That were arguments, if nothing else. Examples of the ways that I felt he was wrong. But that nonetheless did not properly identify the value of the person that I was talking to. That did not respect just how much I deeply appreciated the qualities that he exuded. That ignored those, as a matter of fact. And that the shame that I speak of came from reading back some of those comments and recognizing how blind I was. And I believe that process is at play with many people around the world. That I think that one of the things that Charlie Kirk's death has done for people is served as a wake-up call, a moment of reflection where they think, why am I being so vicious? Why do I feel like I have to argue with somebody? Why do I feel like I have to say that snotty remark because I feel I'm right? You know, I think that people who believe they're doing work for the Father, whether they realize it or not. As a matter of fact, even if you don't believe you're working for the Father, there is no way to escape the will of the Father. Even those who are lost, He works through you. That there has never been a king that didn't operate under the will of the Father, even if they deceived themselves into thinking that they had some other control in this world, that they were powerful enough to escape the Father's will, that nothing happens in this world without the consent of the Father, that there is a greater purpose for that. Even the horrible things that you see in this world, that the only reason they happen is there is some other divine plan or divine will at play. So that as I apply that to Charlie, I understand that, well, I deeply wish what happened to him never, ever happened or happens again to anybody else. I also know that this is an unfortunate way that the Father's most loyal servants often pass from the world. There's a reason that all of the disciples, almost all of them, were hurt very deeply, were killed in brutal ways. It's because bringing the truth into a fallen world makes you a target in that world that is ruled by the deceiver itself, or has tricked himself into thinking it rules, tricks these beings into thinking that it rules, so that a large part of the effect of the world is created by nothing else than the bitterness and deception of the deceiver itself, of the devil. So that I believe the Father does not want these consequences, does not want these things to happen, but also knows that there is a greater narrative playing out, and understands that one of the ways that you bring the truth into the world is through showing how wrong that thing is through the faith of other beings. That there is something powerful when somebody says the truth in the face of even violence. That's what Charlie did. That's a disciple of the Lord. And because of that, Charlie was targeted. I deeply believe that this was not a political motivation, that this is part of the political game that both sides are playing, that they're trying to make it into a political narrative, but that the reason Charlie was so powerful is he spoke truth. Point blank, period. He actually believed what he said, and he argued for those things because he believed in them, because he had faith. And that faith is what people who are possessed by these low vibration energies, I don't even like using that term anymore because it's not the best way to describe it, these demons, these things see that and are repulsed by that kind of power, that kind of faith, so that they use cowardly means to attack them. There's no other way to describe what happened to him other than, or to describe the shooter, but as a coward. And that I believe Charlie is now, like I was saying earlier, that the will of the Father will always be done. So that even if that, whatever motivation that person had to try to kill a father of two and a husband, that's not the effect of what he did. That the effect has been to turn people to faith. That the effect has been to change the narrative, to actually highlight the people who are the most sick in this world, who need the most help, who need to experience consequence in accordance with the will of the Father. Right. So that we now see the truth just a little bit better. And we would not have seen that without the sacrifice that Charlie unfortunately was forced into. You know, I have spoken very politically at times on this podcast, and I've gotten very deep into politics, and it's mainly because I've studied politics. It's something that I have been interested in as like a consumer of history my whole life, like a fan of history in a certain way, that I enjoy learning about what's happened in the past. And I think that politics, in a weird way, is kind of an application of the study of history. That the way that you form political opinions is through kind of what you believe works in the past, something like that. So that it's always been, in my eyes, kind of an expression of what I've learned. But that the game itself, as many people refer to it as, is one of the sickest things in our world, is one of the most effective tools of the devil that causes people to hate each other, that causes people to justify lying, that causes people to justify murder. So that I find myself not wanting to engage with it anymore. Like I said, even if, as somebody who studied it and tried to work in politics, who worked in DC for a brief period of time, to not even want to engage with it, to turn to faith instead, to look at the grander narrative, not the one that they want you to believe, but the one that God outlines in the Bible, to look for those signs, to try to make sure you're on the right side of that type of history, not the one that a political side sketches out. And I believe this is something that many of us would benefit from. That if you're deeply in the political narrative, if you view the world through a political lens, pause. Look at what it's making you become. Look at what it's turning you into. Ask yourself, is this actually who I am? Is this what I want to be? Is there something righteous about this, or is there something very evil about this change I'm noticing inside of myself? What does it inspire inside of you when you think about your political views? Does it make you feel fulfilled? Or does it make you feel out of control? Like somebody else in the world, or a whole group of people in the world, are somehow ruining it, as if the world itself isn't already ruined by the evil one himself. See, there's the deception. Like I said, the devil is a very good liar and gives you a lot of the truth. You can see it clearly, how many different ways that both political sides have ruined the world. But what he'll do is he'll try to make you believe that that's only one side. He'll try to make you believe that there's some kind of group of people that are doing this, when in reality, that is what human beings have done through allowing this thing in themselves, through accepting something other than Christ, something other than the Father, as the one true King. So that even if you do not openly worship the devil, even if you do not openly prescribe the means of evil, if you are not openly advocating for the actual truth, if you're not saying or feeling the love of the Father out loud, you know what you're working for. This is a fallen world, folks. And if you didn't believe me before in previous episodes, I have a feeling you're starting to believe me now. That's not because I'm saying it, that's because that is part of the truth that I did get right. That is part of the actual truth. This is a fallen world. So I think that was something I needed to get off of my chest. Obviously a very emotional time for many of us. And if you're getting emotional as you're listening to this, know that you're obviously not going through it alone. That there is a waking up going on, but that waking up is not some generalized spirituality. It's not based on astrology. It's not based on tarot. It's not based on magic or witchcraft. It's based on faith in one thing, the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. I promise you, if you turn to that, you will feel better. I promise you that hole you feel inside, that despair you feel inside, you'll feel relief from. And know that you don't have to hold on to this world. That you don't want to even. That no matter where you are in life, as I felt many times recently, the things of this world do not represent your value to the Father. But there's a reason that Jesus lived in the wilderness by himself for many years, who didn't have earthly things, who carried with him many times nothing but the shirt, clothes that he was wearing. Many times didn't even have to find food. The Father would provide. Right? That's supposed to demonstrate to you that the things in this world, sometimes even things as trivial as food, fanciness, right? Things you can get obsessed with, that those things will degrade you. It will attach you, chain you to this place, and make you start to think that this place is everything. You'll start to worship it, right? So that I speak to anybody who feels ashamed of their lot in life, feels like they don't have enough, who feels themselves comparing themselves to other people and what they've achieved, what they have physically. Know that that isn't an advantage. That when you leave this world, you cannot take that with you, and you will not. As a matter of fact, those things will make you more scared to leave this world, will keep you attached to it, will keep you holding on. And that is not the way that you rejoin the Father in the afterlife. If you want to refer to it as heaven, that's not the way you get to heaven. The way you get to heaven is actually having a relationship with the Father in the way a father loves a son or a daughter, in the way a daughter or a son loves the Father. Through nothing more than that love. I want you to know I love you. No matter what you give me, no matter what I have in this world, no matter what you put me through, I can't change that love. I can't delete it from myself. I am you. I come from you, and everything comes from you. And I thank you for that reality, for the ability to say that, for the ability to see that, for the ability to feel, period. Even if those feelings can be overwhelming and nasty sometimes. That I imagine that is exactly what the Father is looking for. An undying loyalty, but one that is chosen. So that you do have the will to choose something else. To in place of that put money or fame or promiscuity. And to watch what that does to you. So that you, when you do get thirsty, when you do feel the need to come up for actual air, when you realize that you can't breathe the water, you look up, right? You swim up. And when you finally get that gulp of air, that gasp of what your lungs were designed to breathe, you understand the truth at a deeper level, so that you should not feel shame for questioning. You should not feel shame for getting confused in this world that is designed to confuse you and deceive you. If you have been focused on money, on wealth, on fame, on promiscuity, on any of the vices, know that that is the journey that we go on here. That in some ways, if I have to understand why horrible things happen in this world, that's partially why, is because it has some grander purpose, some relation building quality, some way of revealing the truth to people so that when they see it, when they feel it, they know it. That they still have the ability to choose it, and they choose it because that's the truth, because they know. So that if I have to try to understand why the world looks the way it is, why humanity is on the journey it is on, this is the conclusion I come to. This is the way that I put meaning to what Charlie Kirk sacrificed, is that his death is turning people up. Well, I wish it wasn't necessary. My God, is it beautiful to see people swimming for the surface, right? And to finally see what's popular start to become being faithful, being morally right, rooting out the parts of you that are unclean, that are improperly, that aren't sorted out, that it no longer, many of the vices in the world no longer have the same pull on it simply because somebody lived rightly, led by example, and was loved. So that if you loved Charlie Kirk, imagine if who he loved, why wouldn't you also love that thing? You do, you just forgot. But that reunion is one of the most beautiful things that can happen to a human being, like I said. And it gives meaning to people like Charlie. It gives meaning to the saints who have come before us. The people have made sacrifices like that to bring the truth into the world. So as I said earlier, I want to apologize to all of you deeply for the ways in which I have been deceived and tried to present that as truth. The ways in which those deceptions more than likely led many of you astray at times. And for the effects that had on your life, I take responsibility for my part of that. Just as I now want to be the responsible one to call that out so that I can fix that, to remedy that, to atone for my sin. In the same way you should, in whatever capacity in your life, in the ways that you have been a tool for the devil, recognize it. Do not be ashamed of it. Say it. Live it. Live the truth. Fully recognizing what you came from, what you've been. As a matter of fact, identifying that for people, telling them and showing them, not hiding it. As soon as you try to hide the person you've been before you come to faith, you lie. You start the deception all over again. It's a catch, you see. And one that's so easy to fall into in a world with social media, in a world where most people won't even use their real name on many of these platforms because they have developed multiple identities. They've split themselves off. The part that they present to the world, that they present as perfect, and the other part that they hide behind a user account with 15 zeros behind it. One that can say whatever they want to say and do whatever they want to do without the fear of anybody noticing or ever knowing. Well, I'm here to tell you that not only does the Father see everything, but we are now living in a world where all of these tools see everything. So that if you've operated on that up until this point, know that there is no respite from that. You will be judged, whether it's in this world or the next. As a matter of fact, both. And this is an alignment that's happening so that you can't hide, even if you want to try. And if you try, the only thing that will do is separate you from God and leave you alone in that place where when the judgment comes. So choose faith. Do not be ashamed. Show the world who you are. All of it. Scars and all. Full well knowing that there is not another living human being in this world that does not have an equivalent shameful thing that they are hiding. And as soon as somebody tries to judge you for that, tries to shame you for that, know what is speaking. See it in them. See what it's trying to do to you in that moment. That it's trying to pull you back in, trying to get you to cower, to feel like you're less than. So that you turn from God and hide your face and you turn to it and fill that void that is now growing inside of you through that shame with all of the same things that it tempted you before. So that you fall back into the same thing you were ashamed of. Wow. This will not continue forever, and I truly believe that we are living in the end times in the way it was written in the Bible, in Revelation. While I don't know exactly how that will play out, I do believe that there is judgment coming, that you can feel and see that growing every single day in the way I just described, whether you want to or not, so that it is time to atone for what you've done. And this episode, quite obviously, is one of my attempts to do that for just some of the things that I am guilty of. And as I do that, I hope that that serves as an example for you and how you can go about that in your own life. How you can apologize to God for what and who you've been. For forgetting the love that He has for you always. Because that's the deepest shame you will ever feel. And I believe that's the shame you are left with when this judgment comes. That emptiness that everybody has felt at this point in this fallen world. You are left in a void. Don't end up on that side. Make the much easier choice in that context to simply speak the truth, as Charlie did, regardless of the consequences, because those consequences are not as grievous as what I just described. I can promise you that. Separation from the Father is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Ever. And will always be that way. As a matter of fact, all of the consequences of this world that tear people to shreds are consequences of not having a relationship with the Father, of not knowing Him, whether they recognize it or not. That's the truth as I see it now. So, as I wrap this episode up, I want to send you a lot of love out there and want you to know that I hope that this apology episode of sorts, hope you know that it's heartfelt. Hope you can see that in the video if you're watching. That I have deeply contemplated the ways in which this podcast has affected people in ways that I see other people in other podcasts refusing to admit. Refusing to take responsibility for. I don't want to do that. Not because I want to be better people than them, because I want to have a relationship with the Father, and if I don't do that, I get further from Him. And that's all I need at this point in my life, is for God to know I love Him. And I'm sorry. So join me in that if you feel called to. If you don't, just know that there is judgment coming, and I pray that someday you make that choice. Whew. I could feel this was going to be a heavy one because of the state of the world. We haven't even gotten to half of the other events that are taking place. Half of the deceptions that we can get into specifically, but as I'm now making podcast episodes again, we will get into that at a later time. But that, quite obviously, just doing this episode has taken a lot out of me. And so I want to leave it there today. But as I said earlier, I want to send you a lot of love. And on a lighter note, want to direct you to check out some of the other projects I've been working on. Want to encourage you to express yourself. That one of the things that I do still believe very deeply is that you need to be authentic. That while I have said things that were not true in this podcast, I've also come to the truth through it, through the questioning. And God's always working through you. So that making this episode, I want this to be a fresh start of sorts. That the episodes that have come previously, these were all steps on the path towards faith in the Father, in the truth, in Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And that is the truth as I see it. And that from what I understand, what I see, everything else is a deception. Everything else is a deception, is a lie. So follow him. Follow Jesus. He won't lead you astray. And be authentic in the way that Jesus set an example for. Express the gifts that God has given you. Do not abandon them. Do not get confused in this world thinking that you need to work your life away, that you need to have all of these things, that you need to feel shame because you don't have those things. That will keep you from expressing who you're meant to be. Walk the path. Live simply. Be honest. Love God. Say that out loud. And especially say that out loud when you see people not being that. So that one of my versions of that, and one of the things I've worked on very hard, and one of the reasons there hasn't been podcast episodes for the last 9 months, is I was really trying to finally finish the learning process of making music. Well, I've been a lifelong musician, played many different instruments. I have been learning the process of creating music digitally, using a digital audio workstation, mixing, mastering, and producing. And that I finally came to a culmination, came to a kind of a finish line on that. Not that the learning ever stops, that I have many different areas I'm still improving in. I have finished my first song, my first single. It's called Gaslight Baby. And if you'd like to check it out, it's on all of the major streaming platforms under my pseudonym, Chris the Sage. It's the with an A. ChrisThasage. And that's actually a pseudonym that I've used or developed here in the podcast. But that I will also leave a link to the song and to all of the different streaming platforms you can either purchase or stream on here in the description as well. But that I ask anybody that is out there who has followed me up until this point for your help. That it's hard to get your music heard. It's hard to get seen when you're starting out, just as it is with a podcast. So that if you want to support my work, please look me up on whatever platform that you use to listen to music. Give me a follow, give me a like, leave a comment, share it with anybody that you know that you think would benefit from the song. And know that I am working hard on bringing out more music that's intended to be authentic in the way that this podcast is, that's intended to be vulnerable speak about things that I've gone through in a way that I hope will help bring those things in other people to the surface so that they can heal. Right. That's specifically what Gaslight Baby is about. It's about the relationship that I had a couple years ago that you've heard on here, that there's still episodes with that person of that broke me as a person for years, that I am still in the process of recovering from. And just what that feels like and the process through which you heal that. That's what Gaslight Baby is about. And know that I am also in the process, as we speak, of recording my second song, getting that out. I have a handful of different ideas for songs, and there is more to come. So please remember to follow me on those platforms. And one last thing, if I could, I don't want to keep you too long speaking about this, but on YouTube, I kind of need to get some more followers on my channel, my Chris the Sage music channel. So it's the same spelling name, the Chris the Sage, with music at the end. If you search that, you'll see a photo of me. If you could follow, like, share, subscribe, all of that to that platform, it would help me out immensely. It's mainly for technical reasons and the distribution of music and stuff, so that I can have more control over the way that the music shows up in YouTube. But I've created a music video for Gaslight Baby that is also on that channel. And it is the only video at this point on that channel. But the more views I can get and the more subscribers I can get, the more I have control over the music and how it's published, essentially. So if you could help me out with that, I would be immensely grateful. That is the one thing that I would ask if you have time to do. So that being said, I think that's what I got for you today, folks. I know that this was an emotional one, but I hope that you understand that what I am saying is the truth as I see it, and that I hope it helps you. And from this point forward, this podcast is going to continue to question things, but to do it through a lens of faithfulness to the Father, to God. And if that is not something that you're on board with, I understand. Also, I hope that you are, because I think that's the only way to live in this world, to not degrade. So, I want to send you a lot of love, and I will be back on here very soon.